Hi, I'm Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast, Dr. Kristin Neff.
Thank you, Michelle. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. We were just talking about how much self-compassion is built, or how much that self-compassion is built into the adult chair model. And your work is so needed and, in my opinion, exploding. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. So I'd love to know, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you even get interested in self-compassion?
Right. So for me, like many people, it's a personal journey. I actually first learned about self-compassion my last year of graduate school, which is back in 1996, so quite a while ago. And basically, I was very stressed. I had just gotten through a divorce. It was very messy. I was feeling a lot of self-doubt. It was a difficult time in my life. And so I started to learn mindfulness meditation because I learned that mindfulness was good for stress. And luckily for me, I went to a group that practiced in the tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Zen Buddhist teacher. And Thich Nhat Hanh talks a lot about the importance of giving compassion to yourself as well as others. And so the very first night I learned about self-compassion, and I was like, what? You're allowed to be actively kind and supportive to yourself? I mean, I had never really tried it before. So I started practicing self-compassion, giving myself kindness and support for the difficulty I was experiencing. And I was just blown away by the immediate impact it had on my life. Like almost immediately when I made that little shift toward myself, treating myself like I might treat a friend, I became more, stronger, more resilient, able to get through what I was going through. So then after getting my PhD, I did 2 years of postdoctoral study with one of the country's leading self-esteem researchers, because I was starting to get interested in Buddhism and what is this thing we call a self and all of that. And I started to realize that self-compassion offered a lot of the benefits that self-esteem does without the pitfalls. So if you define self-esteem as a positive judgment of self-worth, I'm a good person, I'm a bad person, or somewhere in between. Self-esteem, we know it's good for psychological health to have high self-esteem. You're going to be less depressed and anxious and probably be happier. But there's a lot of nasty side effects depending on how you get your high self-esteem, right? Do you need to be special and above average? Are you always comparing yourself to other people? Do you feel less self-esteem when you see someone outperforming you, right? Are you narcissistic? A lot of people are ego defensive to protect their self-esteem. Right. And the biggest problem with self-esteem is that it's contingent on success. Anyway, so self-compassion wasn't any of those things. Self-compassion, was giving yourself unconditional kindness and acceptance and support. And so I thought, this is great, in my personal life. And then I got a job at UT Austin, where I am now, University of Texas. And so I decided to kind of take a stab in the dark and create a theoretical model of self-compassion and create a scale to measure it, and started doing research on it. And now there's, I think 3,200 studies on self-compassion. The field is absolutely exploding. 2 or 3 come out every single day now.
Wow.
Yeah. So, so we know a lot about it now, and it is, what you propose in your model is empirically supported. It makes a dramatic difference in people's well-being and ability to cope.
I love that, because people have asked me, well, do you have you done studies on the adult chair? I'm like, no, I know that it just works though, because so much positive feedback. So now the self-compassion studies can really help the adult
Yeah.
chair.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, so really what we're finding is actually self-compassion is effective therapy is partly defined by increasing a client's self-compassion.
Yeah.
Right. Or, so it's whether you're doing classic cognitive behavioral therapy or psychotherapy, psychodynamic therapy, or you're using like a parts model, or I'm sure if we were to look at the adult chair model, one of the things that makes therapy effective is if clients can learn to be self-compassionate. Because if they're only compassionate to themselves in your office, well, what good is that, right?
Exactly.
So they need to take
Exactly.
it with them. And then so
Yes.
there's a lot of research that supports that that's largely how effective therapy works. It's not the only thing, but
Yeah,
it's
I
really
agree.
important.
I
Yeah.
agree. So let me ask you a question. Is it wrong for us then? I think for so many years we were striving to have high self-esteem.
Uh-huh.
I don't feel like self-compassion was something we were striving to do
No.
20 years ago, 30 years ago. I didn't grow up. I always heard self-esteem, self-esteem. And then
Yeah.
as time has gone on, we hear things like self-love, self-worth,
Yeah.
self-compassion now. I mean, I think that you've brought that online big time, self-compassion and all of your beautiful work with self-compassion. So
Yeah.
is that something like, should our goal then be to have self-compassion more than anything else?
Yeah. So one of my favorite quotes is the goal of practice is simply to be a compassionate mess.
Oh, wow. I love
So your
that.
goal changes. In other words, you stop trying not to be a mess. I mean, obviously you try to be as healthy and functional as you can be, but
Yeah.
you'll always be a mess. Life will always be a mess. The human condition is messy. The human
Yes.
condition is not perfect. So if your goal switches from, having it all together and being all these great things you want to be, and your goal simply switches to holding whatever happens with compassion, then that's actually an achievable goal, right? No
Mm,
matter what comes up for you, no matter if when you fail or when you succeed, when you struggle or when things are going
mhm,
well, if you give yourself that kindness and
mhm,
support, you remember that you aren't alone. I think there's some, how do I put it? Some few advantages of the term self-compassion over self-love, which is why I chose
mhm.
self-compassion.
Yeah.
First of all, I mean, and self-love is also great, but
Mhm.
self-love doesn't necessarily include other people. You might be a narcissist and have a lot of self-love. People may argue it's not true self-love, but nonetheless, it's self-focused.
Mhm.
The word compassion, by definition, is a connected stance.
Ooh.
In the Latin, passion means to suffer, cum means with. You're suffering with in this kind of connective way. So, for instance, Michelle, if I had compassion for you, it'd be like, oh, I've been there. As opposed to, let's
Mhm.
say I pity you, it's like, wow, I feel really sorry for you. Which one would you rather
Yeah,
have?
no, the
You know,
first one.
that's
Yeah.
right, because it's connected. It's saying, we're all in this together. We all struggle. We're all imperfect. So self-compassion means as we relate to ourselves, we remember a common humanity. We remember the shared
Mm.
human condition. It's not about me, really. It's just about the fact that I'm a human being struggling to do my best like everyone else. And that in fact, whoever said I was supposed to get it right, that's not, that's when we signed up to be humans.
So true.
We didn't sign a contract saying things are going to go perfectly. We
Yeah.
signed a contract saying things are going to be really rough and messy. Do the best you can,
Oh my
And
gosh, I love that. So
yeah,
true. Because I think people, and I've had clients for years, and now I have, even coaches that are being trained in the adult chair. And, I get these questions all the time and from people just in part of our people or part of the people that listen to the show. When do we reach the end? When does it get so easy?
it
When
never
are
does.
we totally healed? It's like, it doesn't
It
end.
doesn't. It
But I
doesn't.
would guess, because I just know from just practicing the adult chair, where we're mindful, we practice self-compassion, we're living in the moment, we're tuning into our
Yes.
emotions. It, in my opinion, from in my own life, it gets easier.
It gets easier and it gets more habitual.
Yes, but it's
It-
not that life stops showing up in a quote
no.
unquote negative way. It's not that we don't have people that are unfortunately dying in our experience, or
Yeah.
issues at work, or neighbors that hate us. It's like that still happens,
You're
but
you're still a mess, but you
we're still
can
a
be a
mess.
compassionate mess. And in fact, what
Yes.
happens is what reminds you to practice self-compassion is your suffering.
Yes.
Even now, I might be really busy and they'll notice, wow, I'm really stressed. Okay, practice compassion. And almost
Yes.
immediately it makes me more able to and deal with it. Uh,
Yes.
And you actually, again, you start shifting your goal. Your goal shifts from being away from being perfect and just shifts toward being, you know, obviously, if you care about yourself and you want to
Yeah.
be, so compassion by definition in the science realm is a motivation to alleviate suffering. Right.
Ooh, a
So
motivation to
the
alleviate
motivation to
suffering. Oh, I
alleviate
love that.
suffering, right?
Okay.
And also in a connected way. And so asking yourself, what do I need? What do I need to be healthy? What do I need to be well?
Yeah.
That is the really core motivation of self-compassion. But
Mm.
ironically, what you start to realize is what you need to be well is not to be perfect. That's actually not possible.
Yeah.
But if you, compassion is a positive emotion. Compassion is a positive mind state. And what's
Mhm.
interesting, another way of talking about what compassion is or what it feels like is we embrace our pain with love and connection and also mindfulness.
Mm.
My
Mhm.
model, mindfulness, is core to self-compassion because you need to be mindful. You need to have some equanimity. You need to have some perspective on your experience. Otherwise, you can't give yourself compassion. You're just either you're lost in it or you're ignoring it and you're fighting it. So
Yeah.
mindfulness gives us the awareness to say, wow, you're really having a hard time. What you need.
Yeah.
Mindfulness, common humanity, and kindness are the three core components of self-compassion. And I forget where I was going with that, but anyway.
No, it's fine. It's
Yeah.
fine. What I'm realizing is, though, as you're saying this, and much like living in the adult chair, it's like we need to have awareness and consciousness,
Yes, we
or
need awareness.
or
It's
else,
actually, it's really the foundation. You can't do
yeah,
anything without that awareness.
or
And
else we
that's
live
why,
in the unconscious mind and we have all the unconscious negative ruminating
exactly,
thoughts. Right.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And so in many ways, self-compassion and mindfulness are sister constructs. In fact,
Yeah.
most of the research on self-compassion is published in the journal Mindfulness because they really
Ah,
go hand in hand. They aren't
yeah.
exactly the same, but they're you know, kind of, we like to say they're best friends. They
Yeah.
go
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
together.
I like
Yeah.
that. So, how would someone tell me what I mean? I have a general sense of what it looks like, but I want to hear from the master teacher here. So, tell us, what does self-compassion look like? Like, what would that look like for someone? Give me like a concrete example.
Yeah, well, so this is a great thing about self-compassion. It's not rocket science and it's not
Hmm.
esoteric. I mean, mindfulness is a little like, what is that exactly? It's hard to get
Yeah.
your head around it.
Yeah.
Self-compassion is very easy. So, and most workshops I teach, I just start with a simple exercise. Think of some past times when you've had a very close friend that you cared about come to you who is struggling. Maybe they're feeling inadequate about something, or maybe they failed or made a mistake, or they were just going through a difficult time. And then write down, what do you normally say to your friend in those situations? You know, not only what do you say, how do you say it? What's your tone of voice like? What's your body posture like? And then, you know, and then I asked them to think, well, what about yourself, right? How do you treat yourself in those situations? And people can see the immediate difference. And so the simplest way to practice self-compassion is to say, how would I respond to a dear friend who is going through the exact same situation I'm going through? And then it's already there.
It's done.
And I say,
Hmm.
especially women. Women are raised to be compassion experts. You know, we've
Hmm.
learned how to nurture, whether or not we have children, but especially
Hmm.
if we have children, we've learned how to be supportive and nurturing and kind and warm, caring, to give people support. But we haven't been told we're allowed to give it to ourselves. In fact, women have been tricked. I think it's
Yeah.
tricked into thinking it's selfish. And the reason I say tricked is, this is going to be my slight feminist side coming out, is, wow, that really benefits some people, doesn't it? If women's role is just to help others, who benefits from that? The people
Yeah.
with the
Right.
power, you know?
Yeah.
And so we're told it's selfish to turn this inward, you know, as if we have 5 units of compassion. And if I give 3 to myself, I'm only going to have 2 left over. It doesn't work that way. You know,
Yeah.
the more compassion flows inward, the more it can flow outward. It's additive. You know, it's like we're tapping into this larger pool of compassion. The more we resource ourselves, the more we have available to give to others. And so it's a complete fallacy that it's selfish. Well, and the research again supports that. You know,
Ooh.
you're less likely to burn out while caring for others. You're likely to have better relationships with others. You have more energy and resources to give to others when you resource yourself. Um,
Mm.
And so again, that's one of the myths about self-compassion that stand in the way. For women, that's probably the biggest block, is this
Mhm.
kind of ideal of, if I'm a good woman, I'm always sacrificing myself. Our image
Yeah, it's our
comes from,
identity.
I'm a good woman, but because I always say yes to everyone, otherwise people
Yeah.
won't like me. And it's all BS. I'm sorry, it's all BS. And
Mhm.
it's in many ways it's designed to support a system in which women were helpers, and
Mhm.
they weren't running the show. And so I think really think if we want full equality, we have, part of this is saying, hey, I need to meet my own needs. In addition to, it's not like we want to be selfish and just, put ourselves first, but we have to include ourselves in the circle of compassion. Otherwise,
Mhm.
it's not really compassion if it's one-sided or lopsided.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I've said this for years, whether it's self-love, self-compassion, people say, well, that's selfish. I can't
Yeah.
do that. No, I love that you said the more I can give myself, the more I can give others.
And it's also, if you look at the physiological level, the way the human brain works is we all have mirror neurons. The brain evolved to feel the emotions of others,
Hmm.
right? Because those especially those parents who are more sensitive to their babies, they pass their genes on.
Hmm.
So if I'm interacting with you and I'm full of self-hatred and like frustration and self-blame, your mirror neurons are picking up on that. I don't have to
Hmm.
say anything. This happens at the pre-verbal level.
Hmm.
So we can actually, when we talk about feeling other people's vibes, it's actually it actually is happening neurologically. We feel other people's emotions. The brain is designed to do that.
Hmm.
So if I'm full of self-hate and blame and shame, that's what you're picking up on. But if I'm full of compassion and kindness and understanding toward myself, that's what you're picking up on.
Yeah.
So the idea that self and other are separate, and that, how I
Mm-mm.
treat myself is totally unrelated to how I treat you, it's a fallacy. That's an illusion.
Yeah.
We're always interacting, even at the neurological level. So what I aim inward is affecting people I interact with outwardly as well. And so I learned this from my son Rowan, who's autistic. And so autistic kids are very sensitive. They're
Hmm.
very sensitive to others' emotions. And I would find that, if he was tantruming or something, and I was like, oh, I'm such a bad mother. Why can't I fix this? His tantrums would get worse. But if I could give myself compassion for, this is so hard, I feel so overwhelmed, kind of be kind for myself, I would actually see him calm down. So when I gave myself compassion, I would help him self-regulate. And this is how the
Incredible.
brain works. And so again, it's why it breaks my heart when people say self-compassion is selfish. It's the biggest gift you can give to others and yourself, because we're interconnected. We aren't separate, isolated individuals.
So true. I have people for years have said to me, they're worried. Parents are worried. How do I teach my kids how to be healthy adults?
Yeah.
I
Model it.
think I hurt them, right? I think I hurt them. Now they're teenagers. What do I do? And my answer is always the same. And you are mirroring this for me now, which is you be healthy. You be
Absolutely.
self compassionate. You live in the moment. You live with mindfulness. You don't have to sit down and teach them anything. Just live it. And then they pick
Yes.
up on it.
Yeah. And
And
again,
then
there's
they can
research.
become that because of the mirror
Yeah.
neurons.
Yeah, and there's
Yes.
research to support this, that when you
Thank
model
you.
self-compassion,
Love
especially
it.
verbally, like when you drop a glass in front of your child, it's a brilliant opportunity to model self-compassion. Oh
Yeah.
man, oh, I love that glass. Oh, I'm sad. Well, it's okay, it happens. It's only human, and that
Yeah.
you just model it out loud, and then people learn that that's the way to be. If you say, "Oh, I'm such an idiot," you're modeling that for your kid.
Exactly. And you're getting angry about it, which
Yeah.
let's talk about anger because I've heard you
Okay,
talk
good.
about anger.
Yeah. All right.
I love anger.
Me
Anger for
too.
me is a source of power. And I think as humans, we learn not to be angry, especially women.
Especially women.
Tap
Yeah,
tap down that anger. Don't be angry. And it's like that's our power source. So
big.
please talk about anger. Please
Yeah,
talk about
so
the
so my new
emotion of
my new
anger.
book, is coming out in June. It's called Fierce Self-Compassion: How Women Can Harness Kindness to Speak Up, Claim Their Power, and Thrive.
Oh my
And so
gosh.
it's all about the fact that, and if you look at gender roles, and gender roles have harmed everyone.
They
So I
have.
talk about I talk about fierce and tender self-compassion. There's these two energies, fierceness and tenderness. It's kind of like the yin and yang they talk about in Chinese philosophy. There's a nurturing, soft, gentle energy of life. And there's also a more fierce, powerful, like active energy of life.
Mm-hmm.
And health, at least from the ancient Chinese perspective, is you have to have balance between the two. And what's happened is we've gendered these things. So, men, they're allowed to be fierce and active and strong and brave, but they can't be tender.
Nope.
Then they're wussies, and what was that? That harms men emotionally. And women, it's just the opposite. We're allowed to be nurturing and soft and kind, but we don't like it if a woman's fierce or angry. And there's a lot of social sanctions for it. And anger is precisely what you say. There's constructive anger and destructive anger.
Yeah.
Constructive anger is when we harness our power. Anger makes you motivated.
Yep.
When you're angry, you're motivated to do something about it. You're motivated to stand up to injustice. It suppresses the fear response. You actually become braver when you're more angry, right? So when when anger has a loving intention, which is to prevent harm, and preventing harm is a loving intention, the desire to alleviate suffering. When anger is harnessed to the desire to alleviate suffering, it's actually constructive. It becomes destructive when instead of focusing on preventing harm, it's like harming others, or it becomes hostile, or it becomes really personal.
Right.
That's not helpful. But compassion and anger, when anger is harnessed toward alleviating suffering, fighting against social injustice, saying no to someone who's abusing us or crossing our boundaries or sexually harassing us or anything, that's an ultimate act of compassion. Sadly, women are socialized not to be angry. We're told we're ugly when we're angry.
Yeah.
This research that shows people don't like us as much when we're angry. And so what we need to do is, I think really, it's an act of empowerment to say, screw that. I'm not going to buy into it. I'm allowed to be angry. Again, as long as it's not destructive. I can harness that anger to stand up to injustice, to fight for my fair rights. But again, it has to be balanced with the tenderness. I don't want to just become an angry person exploding on everyone.
Right.
We need to integrate the yin and yang, the fierceness and tenderness. And that's how we're going to be most effective. And I also really think that, if you look at our world today, I think part of the problem is gender role socialization, because men have been so socialized to achieve, to conquer, to do it all, and not to let any of these like soft, fluffy feelings like love or care or nurturing come in, because they're ridiculed for it. And look at our world today, look at how we've exploited the planet to the point where global warming is a problem, entrenched poverty, wealth inequality, racism. A lot of that comes from this quest for power and dominance and achievement without balance not balanced with acceptance. And so women, I think, are in a really good position to start changing our world, right? If we
agree.
we can claim our fierce side, claim our power, and integrate it, because we're already compassion experts. That's the thing. It's just out of balance because it's only aimed outward. So we need to aim fierce and tender self-compassion, inward self-compassion and then outward compassion. In other words, it's not compassionate to say, oh yeah, the planet's dying, entrenched systemic racism. Oh, it's so sad. That's not self-compassion. You got to do something about it, right?
I agree.
And that's kind of what my book's all about, is helping women, is aimed just for women, because again, gender socialization is different for men and women. Regardless of your gender identity, you still suffer from people. We put people in boxes based on gender, which harms everyone, not just people who are like transgender. It harms everyone, even cisgendered people. It harms us because it limits the full expression of our humanity. So I'm really passionate. So my personal journey the last few years has been, I'm actually more yang than yin.
So am I. That's me too.
Yeah. But it depends on context. Like with my son, I'm more yin. So my whole journey has been integrating both, owning my power. Like, that you probably know, you're familiar with the Hindu goddess Kali.
Oh yeah.
Who's the goddess of, anger and destruction. But what does she destroy? She destroys illusion. That's what she destroys.
Which is what we want to destroy.
We want to destroy, and especially the illusion of separation. the illusion that we're separate beings who don't matter, who are dehumanizing others. And so when we harness the energy of Kali, or the metaphor I like, the other two metaphors is there's mother, the kind of tender, nurturing energy, and there's mama bear. Nothing is more powerful than mama bear,
No way.
And, in fact, that character, the Hulk, was created by the creator created it after seeing a mother lift a 3,000-pound car off her child who was trapped underneath.
No way. I
That's
didn't even
mama
know that.
bear. Yeah,
Oh
mama
my
bear
gosh.
is like incredibly powerful. And women, I think all people have it inside them, but women have this. We all know it. We can sense it. Like we
Yeah.
can sense mama bear. We can sense Kali. This force is in us, and we've been, again, I hate to say, tricked into disavowing
Yeah.
it. Because if we claimed our power, we might not accept our unequal treatment.
I think you're so right about that.
So it's time, like there's something shifting. I can feel it.
I feel it
With
too,
the Me Too
Kristin. I
movement,
do. Yeah.
it's time for us to say no more.
And I think a lot of women would say, well, it's not polite. I shouldn't speak up. And, and no, no,
Yeah, and again,
it's
it doesn't
time.
mean that you have to criticize people. The whole
No.
point with the tenderness, it's not personal, it's not destructive, it's constructive.
Yeah.
But you have, so this book was largely inspired by, the Me Too movement, and I had a really, really terrible experience with someone I knew who turned out to be a sex predator, and kind of this whole thing of so many women like that were the victims, like they couldn't allow themselves to be angry or to speak up. And I just saw it's because we're so socialized. I don't want to upset people. I don't want to make waves. It may harm people. It's like, no, that's how it's been perpetrated for so long. Sexual harassment and abuse has been going on for thousands of years.
Yeah.
But we're socialized not to speak up and not to rock the boat.
Yeah.
And that's harmful for everyone. But again, speaking up doesn't mean we're just therefore going to be hostile and aggressive. That's too much yang without the yin.
Yeah.
If we balance it, we can actually make productive change.
What's coming to my mind as you're saying all this is because we are so suppressed. Talk to me a little bit about, and I'm thinking there's research on this. I'm going to make a wild guess, but self-compassion and depression.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of research.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of women that are, and men too, I have to say, like when we just learn to be quote unquote polite and not speak up and suppress all that really beautiful yang energy. It's like, what happens to us? And I would say it's depression. That's one of the things that could happen. So tell me about your research on that.
There's a big literature on, so all forms of psychopathology, really. So whether it's depression, anxiety, stress, suicidal ideation, eating disorders, really, you name it. So if you aren't self-compassionate, if you're self-critical, again, the opposite of self-compassion is when you're really judgmental of yourself, when you feel isolated from others, you think you're uniquely flawed or uniquely damaged. And if you aren't mindful, in other words, if you just ruminate and you're just lost in the thoughts of how horrible I am, that leads to psychopathology. It's the main driver of it. Things like, and also what happens is it activates the sympathetic nervous system. You've got too much cortisol.
Yep.
And the body responds to all this activation by shutting down, or it becomes anxious. It kind of depends how your particular form of psychopathology manifests. So self-compassion is a direct antidote to that. And so one of the benefits of self-compassion training is less shame, less depression, less anxiety, less stress, greater happiness, greater well-being, greater life satisfaction. And again, that's why it's really the key ingredient, you might say, of effective psychotherapy.
I so agree with that.
And so Paul Gilbert created a type of therapy actually designed for people who struggle with self-compassion, maybe people with the trauma history, for instance. So I should say people with the trauma history whose parents, who are supposed to make them feel safe and loved and cared for, whose parents didn't make themselves feel safe and loved and cared for, can actually be a little scary to develop self-compassion because the brain systems that were supposed to be associated with being feel safe and cared for get mixed in with fear. And there's a term for it. We actually call it backdraft.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically when you start opening your heart, you've had to shut it just to survive.
Yeah.
And you start opening your heart and like all this old pain comes rushing out. And that can be scary. It can be
Mm-hmm.
unsettling. It may
Yeah.
be linked with memories of, old traumatic memories. It's actually a good sign because it means you're opening up, but it does mean you need to go more slowly, a little more carefully, and make sure you do it safely.
Mm-hmm.
And so Paul Gilbert has created something called compassion focused therapy, where he helps, this therapy helps people deal with this fear of self-compassion. But one thing he really focuses on is kind of distinguishing uh, compassion and kindness from submissiveness. A lot
Mm.
of people, they learned that they had to submit. They had to be submissive, and not just to survive. You don't want to judge yourself for it.
Right. Right.
But compassion is not about submissiveness.
Mm.
Compassion, especially self-compassion, is about being courageous, is about standing up for yourself, it's about drawing boundaries, saying no. That's what true self-compassion is.
I'm
Again, there's a lot
thinking,
of research showing it's very, very effective for all sorts of
and
disorders.
and what I'm hearing you not say is that we need medication in order to do this.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm really neutral on medication. I think for some people it's helpful, for some people they don't need
I
it.
agree. And
I
I
think
just want to say this.
yeah,
I'm not telling people to get off of their medication.
yeah.
I'm not telling people to go on medication, but what
Yes.
I'm not hearing you say that at all. I'm
Oh,
hearing,
no, yeah.
I like that there's a way to do this just
Yeah.
in using a daily practice of something like self-compassion to walk your way out of depression, anxiety.
Yes.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to go back just for a second about someone with trauma, because if
Mhm.
I've got people for sure that are listening to this that have had trauma.
Yeah.
So when we're opening up the heart or we're opening up to these emotions, we're opening up to self-compassion, all of these emotions are coming in. We can slow it down and just say,
Yeah.
let's feel it, slowly as it comes through us.
Yeah.
Um, what else can you say about that as far as feeling emotions and letting them come through so slowly? Is there anything else you can add to that as far as opening up to
Yeah.
self-compassion? Like just anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, yeah. So again, I mean, it's really important to know about backdraft. And the idea of the house on fire exploding when you open the doors is too extreme. You can also think of, what happens when your hands freeze. Maybe you're shoveling snow and your hands freeze.
Yeah.
And then when you go inside and they warm up, they hurt.
Yeah.
It's also similar. We had to numb our hearts in order
Hmm.
just to survive. And then we start warming it up with self-compassion and they start to hurt.
Yeah.
So first of all, remember that it's a good sign. It's not a bad sign.
Mm.
Um, my colleague Chris Grimmer likes to say, don't worry, it feels like kaboom, but it's really kabloom. It means your heart's fine. It means
I
you're
like
letting the
that.
fresh air of love in, so you don't have to judge yourself for it. But so what's really important is that you build the muscle of self-compassion, which is you're getting in the habit of asking yourself, well, what do I need right now? And in
Mm.
fact, if practicing self-compassion, like maybe speaking to yourself with kind of love and kindness is too activating, it's actually not compassionate to keep doing that if you're re-traumatizing yourself.
Yeah.
So what you do is you practice self-compassion in another way. You say, this is too much. What do I need right now? Well, maybe I just need to pet my cat or take a warm bath or take a walk or have a cup of tea. And when you do that, you're actually still building the habit of giving yourself what you need. You are still caring for yourself, but you're doing it more behaviorally, which is
Mm-hmm.
safer than maybe emotionally, which maybe is too much. And then you build that muscle and then you start to become more familiar with the habit of caring for yourself. And then you can kind of build up gradually.
Mm.
Mindfulness also is really good for dealing with feelings of overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
Something as simple as feeling your feet on the floor, grounding yourself to the earth, feeling that point of contact. What
Mm-hmm.
happens is whenever we focus on one thing like that, it has the effect of calming and settling the mind.
Mm.
So again, we need to be self-compassionate as we practice self-compassion. So if we have a lot of backdraft, we just need to go slowly and we need to do it in a way that's kind, that's in a way which is really what we need in the moment. And we have a saying in the compassion world, walk slowly, go farther. You
Yeah.
just like
So
try to
true.
run, you
So
collapse,
true. So true.
but just slow and steady. And it's really about It's really a means, not an ends. It's not about getting to this mythical place where you're just full of love and kindness all the time. It's really just, how do I approach the journey?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love these examples that you used. And I'm wondering if someone's listening and they're thinking, what in the world does self-compassion look like? Or when they ask that question to themselves, what do I need right now? Some people go into that shutdown mode and they honestly have no idea. Like they
Yeah,
don't even know where to begin. So I
right,
love your idea of putting your feet on the ground and just grounding in.
right,
Maybe it's a bath that you need. It's
right.
very the word that was coming to me, I think was like gentle and like you said,
Yeah,
tenderness. Like how can you be tender? And I like what you said earlier as far as what would you do for a friend?
right, right.
But can you give us a few more examples of what self-compassion might look like just for people in case they're sitting here going, I don't know what to do. I don't even know what it looks like.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Again, but you do know what it looks like for others.
Exactly.
I would almost guarantee you've had a friend who needed something. And by the way, what you need kind of just depends on where you are. Sometimes you need to go left. Sometimes you need to go right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you may need to give yourself a gentle kick in the butt. you know,
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to say, okay, actually, maybe I need to get out of the house, or maybe I need to do something. Maybe I need to challenge myself a little bit.
I'm
It's
glad that you said that. Maybe I need to get out of the house. I just want to interject this for people that are listening. For me, I have to say, I have to watch myself. I can become a workaholic because I love what I do and I never want to stop. But
got that one. Yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean? But I'm noticing like recently, just to give people, I think this would be a few examples. I notice I'm like, I need to start taking these little pauses throughout the day,
Yes.
2 minutes, 3 times a day, where I'm sitting, regrounding, maybe looking out. I
Yeah.
live on a lake. I look out at the water. I'm looking at the
Right.
trees. But the other day I said, you know what? I feel like my body needs a walk.
Yes.
I'm not going to talk on the phone. I'm just going to go for a walk. It's
Yes.
50 degrees. It's a little warmer today. I'm just going to go for a walk. There's a path along the lake. It's very down. What's the word I want? Brings down my nervous system. It
Yes. Yes.
balances me. So that would be self-compassion. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So you might say one form of self-compassion is behavioral self-care, like taking a
Great.
walk, taking a pause, right? And all those things are part of self-compassion. But there's also emotional self-compassion, which is really how we relate to our pain,
Yeah.
especially our emotional pain. And
Yeah.
so we need both, right?
Yeah.
So for instance, I teach self-compassion to healthcare professionals.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have time to take a break. They're like busy. They don't have time to do yoga or do their friends. So we just teach them, okay, when you're feeling the stress of the job, can
Yeah.
you give yourself some kindness? Can you just maybe take a moment and put your hand on your heart, or if you're in public, maybe hold your own hand and say, oh, this is really hard. How can I help myself in the moment? Just even just asking the question in a caring way, what do I need right now? And
Mm-hmm.
some people think this sounds funny. I use terms of endearment with myself because I do with everyone. I might say darling or something. And it's
Yeah.
funny. I react to that. If I call myself darling, it's like, oh, I feel it.
Yeah.
So if you're someone who uses those terms of endearment naturally with your friends or the people you care
Yeah.
about, it can be really effective with yourself. Just showing yourself that you care, as opposed to just driving yourself, you got to do better, or like being the hard master. Showing yourself that you care and that you're going to support yourself can be
Mm-hmm.
really, really life-changing, as a matter of fact. So
Yeah.
so behavioral self-care is part of it, and also just really emotional kindness
I
and
have to
support,
say,
warmth.
I was
Yeah.
telling you, thank you. That's really key. I'm glad you said behavioral and emotional. I was sharing with you before the show, like where this whole adult chair model came from. And I was sharing with you, I lived with anxiety and depression for probably the first third of my life.
Wow.
And I remember the negative ruminating thoughts. I was like,
Yeah.
I am stuck in this hamster wheel of like self-hatred. And the
Yeah.
first thing I did was I started changing my thoughts.
Yeah.
And then I found, and I don't know if this is typical for people, but then the behavioral came second. I always was
Right.
a walker. I always loved to walk, but I
Yeah.
used to walk because I should, and it, burns calories. But now I do it because it just feels so good and it's what Michelle needs.
Right. Right.
But
Right. Right.
gosh, did it change my emotional state? Just being mindful and
Yeah.
using words like you said, like I would say, okay, little honey,
Yeah.
it's
Uh-huh.
okay. You did okay today, and that's okay. And you are a good mom. And I started
Yeah.
feeling better. Blew my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just changing my thoughts.
That's
but
right.
having conscious thoughts about
And
myself.
it's actually, I mean, what you described is more than just changing your thoughts. You're changing how you hold your thoughts.
Yep.
So first of all, it's really hard to completely change our thoughts. We can't control our brain. Thoughts come up, it's just,
Yeah.
they come into us from lifetime of habit and, the external world. But the more, first of all, we accept our thoughts, okay, that's a thought. We can't not have the thought can't use force of will to not have that
Right.
negative thought.
Right. Right.
But we can allow that negative thought to be there. But what really is effective is you say, oh, it hurts to have that thought. It's the warmth. And because what
Yes.
we're doing, we're actually physiologically, what we're doing is we're tapping in to the care system, the attachment system. We have a
Mm-hmm.
whole physiology of care where we release oxytocin and opiates. We start to calm down. There's parts of the brain, the insula, other parts of the brain. It's not just the prefrontal cortex.
Mm-hmm.
We have
Mm-hmm.
parts of the brain that help us feel safe and cared for. And again, just think about it. Mammals, for the first 2 years of life, or actually the first 30 years of life, totally dependent on their parents, right? In the sense of, we're designed to feel safe when we feel cared for
Mm-hmm.
by others
Mm-hmm.
in, groups. And so what we're doing when we give ourselves warmth is we're actually tapping into the physiology of care, and it
Mm.
changes our physiology.
Yeah.
So, and that's why touch is so powerful. You
Yes.
might not be able to change your thoughts, but you can put your hand on your thought in your heart and say, oh, that thought again, oh, that hurts. And then
Yeah.
immediately the whole thing shifts.
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really changed myself through using self-compassion, but I think when I started using this, I
You
didn't
didn't
even
know,
know it
you
was
didn't know
called
it was
self-compassion.
self-compassion, right? Yeah. But it is changing your thoughts. But sometimes what happens is people they just, okay, I'm not going to think that thought.
No, that doesn't work.
And
In
if you
fact,
do
the
it,
thoughts get louder. The
they
negative
get
thoughts get
louder.
louder.
If you resist negative thoughts,
Yeah.
they get worse, they get stronger. There's a whole body research on that. If thought suppression backfires.
Yeah.
But if you allow the thought to be there with kindness, and you may gently encourage to reframe a different thought,
Yeah.
then that's more effective.
Yeah. Oh,
It's exactly like parenting, really, whether or not we're parents, but especially for parents, we have a lot of models for this.
mm-hmm.
Self-compassion is a way of reparenting yourself.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so
it
are
is.
you going to tell your
Totally.
child, don't think that?
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that one, But if you
Yeah.
love your child, if you help them feel safe, if you know that you're there for them unconditionally, you encourage change. It's not compassionate as a parent if you say, okay, fine, don't study, the ice cream you want. That's not compassionate. That's going to harm your child.
So true.
But you aren't, if you shame your child into trying to do what they want, they may comply, but if you punish your child all the time, there's going to be a lot of negative consequences. Like you're going to harm their mental health, you're going to cause anxiety. So you encourage your child. I believe in you. How can I help you reach your goals? I care about you. I want you to
Yeah.
succeed. That more encouraging, supportive stance, and again, the research really supports this, is much more effective than harsh self-criticism for
Mm.
change.
And I found over time that my thoughts, my automatic thoughts started changing the kinder I was to myself.
Yeah.
All those negative hating thoughts faded away. I hardly have them. Like I'm still human. So
Yeah.
I'm going to have every once
Yeah.
in a while, my inner critic pops in, but now
Yeah.
I know what to do. I'm like, all right, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay.
And also we don't want to judge our inner critic either.
No.
And it can be tempting because we've suffered so much at the hands of our inner critic.
Yeah.
But we have to remember our inner critic is actually trying to help us.
Oh,
Our
of
inner
course.
critic feels we're threatened, there's some problem. And if I don't change my behavior, I'm going to die or something really bad's going to happen. So our
Right.
inner critic, which from the parts models, we need to thank our inner critic.
Yep. For sure.
Be appreciative of it,
For
but just
sure.
say, I think, yeah, I'm sure our inner critic is often a younger part of us.
Yep.
It's not very wise. The only thing it knows to say is danger, danger. Freak out mode is all it has
Yes.
in its tool bag. So we thank it and then say, the more compassionate self, or what you would call the adult chair,
Yeah.
who has a chance to say something. But it gets drowned out if when we suppress the inner critic. Ironically, it gets stronger. It feels it has to scream louder to be heard.
It wants to be heard. That's why we have to
Wants
listen
be
to these
heard.
inner parts. Oh yeah.
Exactly.
This
Yeah.
could lead us down a whole other tangent right now.
Yeah. But so we have a practice
So
in the
true.
mindful self-compassion program that's based on parts work that I'm sure is very similar to what
Mm-hmm,
you compassionate motivation.
Yeah.
And the whole thing rests on thanking the inner critic for how it's trying to help you before you can even start listening to the other voices.
100%. You have to turn toward those parts and get to know them, thank them.
Yeah.
Because that, like you said, their intention is good.
Their intention is good.
It's
Yeah.
good.
That surprises people.
It does. They're like, well, they're being mean. It's being mean. Yeah, but it's good. Get to know it and it'll transform. So
Yeah, that's right.
Kristin, this was so good. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Tell us, please. And I'm really excited for Fierce Self-Compassion for Women. Can we pre-order that book on Amazon?
You can pre-order it right now on Amazon.
Oh, girl, I'm going to pre-order it right when we hang up. I promise you that. It sounds amazing. Tell us, where can people find you? What are you offering? Let us know about you, and we can direct people your way.
Yeah. Well, so I'm easy to find. If you Google the word self-compassion, you'll find me because I got in early. So all algorithms lead to me, luckily.
Yay.
So I've got a website called selfcompassion.org. You can take the scale I developed to measure your level of self-compassion. I have a TED Talk on there. I've got guided meditations. I have practices. I have links to training. So I co-founded this place called Center for Mindful Self-Compassion that offers a lot of online training.
Mm-hmm.
We offer, a lot of courses, more than I can offer myself. What else was I going to say about that? Basically, that's where to find me. Oh yeah, if you're a research nerd, I have like thousands of PDFs of the original science articles. So you don't have to believe
on your website.
Yeah, organized by category. I've got like self-compassion and wellness, self-compassion and family, self-compassion and gender. Yeah, so I tried to make it really easy for people who are into the science to access it. And even if you're doing research, I have a lot of scales on there you can use in your research. So it's one-stop shopping.
I love that. Thank you for putting that on your website. I love that. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again. Thanks for joining us. I hope someday you'll come back and join us again, because this is a lot of good stuff and people need to hear a lot more about self-compassion. So thanks for being here with us today.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you.